And early stage accounting can be overwhelming and can even become a huge source of stress for startups that are trying to manage multiple things while operating on shoestring budgets. And the woes are not just for the fledglings. Startups can grow fast and the compliances need to be altered accordingly, not just for themselves, but also for the partner ecosystems that they deal with. Now, therefore, moving from conventional tax compliance processes towards a more streamlined technology oriented setup is going to make it easier for startups to operate and comply. And what makes this more easier is that most of them are early adopters of technology anyway, and incorporating tech solutions into their workflows is a welcome choice. But there are still gaps present. Today's discussion delves into the major challenges faced by startups on the financial management side and how they can use the power of technology to help resolve these and ensure better compliance at every stage, pre-funding and post-funding. Without further delay, let me introduce our panel of leaders for today's talk. Joining me are Nilesh Talati, CFO at Pepperfry, India's leading online marketplace for furniture and home decor. Harsh Binani, co-founder at SmartWorks, which is India's leading managed and flexible office space provider. Dilip Jain, Group Finance Controller at Car Dekho, which is a search and e-commerce platform for new and used cars that has become the latest startups in the world's second largest market to reach the unicorn status. And Swaroop Pripaka, Director of Strategy at Clear and our master for all things compliance. Unfortunately, Rohan Mittal from Rivigo could not join us for this discussion. Meanwhile, thank you everyone for joining us for what looks like is going to be a wide-ranging discussion, rich in content and experience. So, Swaroop, let me start with you. Now, over the course of this series, we have understood how the marriage of technology and compliance can help enterprises in many sectors, spanning manufacturing to logistics to automotive companies. But when we talk of startups today, finance is often an overlooked function for them, which typically they start hiring talent for product, sales, and technology roles first as they establish their business and get processes in place. Now, tax compliances, they're generally outsourced to an external agency who can manage it up to a certain threshold of growth, which startups are known to hit fast. So how can startups drive 100% compliance with a lean team by using technology? I want you to set the context of what the thinking should be for startups when they think of compliance.
Sure. Thanks, Gautam. Maybe let me first take a step back and tell you what has happened, right? For some of the audience who have probably not seen our previous episodes. So what has happened in compliance is one space where actually the government is adopting technology at a much faster pace, right, as opposed to the rest of the ecosystem. In fact, they are a few steps ahead of like most enterprises, right? And this has led to like several things. There are three broad themes that we at Clear track, right, that we're seeing in compliance. So the first thing that we see is compliance and supply chain, right? They're traditionally seen as two isolated concepts. Right? In the erstwhile era, all you needed to be compliant was, let's say, your tax auditor, and your data, right? That is all you needed. But now what's happening is the reason supply chain is getting merged with compliance is because you also need your broader ecosystem to be compliant, right? There, your vendors, transporters, dealers, distributors, merchants, all of them also need to be compliant, and the onus of their compliance either directly hits you in, let's say, in terms of input tax credit, or indirectly hits you, right? Because let's say you're not able to acquire as many restaurants or drivers or merchants or whatever business startups are in, right? The second part of the piece that we are seeing is the amount of buffer that the government is giving is also coming down, right? They're becoming a lot more stringent. And rightly so, right? Because taxes is fundamentally government's revenue, right? It's their, for instance, revenue optimization. And what a lot of this does is they cut down on, let's say, a lot of tax avoidance that is in the system and makes the informal into the formal sector, right? Like, for example, the ITC claims, the buffer used to be 20%, and it slowly brought down to 10% and to 5%, and now it's almost 0%. There's no buffer anymore, right? There is the whole TDS 206 law that was implemented almost very quickly at almost a lightning speed, right? And they're also adopting a lot more technology, right? If you think about it, if you step back, there are a lot of systems that the government has. They've been adopting technology in silos, but now they're also adopting technology across the board and connecting each of the silos together, right? We've already seen that, for example, with e-invoicing and GST coming together, right? They're now thinking of connecting the whole FASTag system with the e-way bill NIC system, right? So they would actually know in real time whether your e-way bill was valid or not when you're, let's say, crossing certain borders. They're considering connecting the whole direct tax and the indirect tax system, right? So the in terms of technology adoption, we're actually at the cusp. There is still a lot more way to go. And what these broad three themes mean is the government actually has a lot of data about you. Just like how a lot of startups here have a lot of data about their customers, the government also has a lot of data about these startups. And what this means is there's very little scope for error. And in the scope and in the context of startups, right, this is really painful, and even more painful than, let's say, a lot of established enterprises, right? For example, if you take a startup through the typical growth cycle, right? Let's say a seed, Series A level type of a round, to Series B, Series C, and then to an IPO, right? Their broad set of compliance needs scale very differently as opposed to another larger established enterprise where there are established processes. The business model doesn't change like let's say an HUL or a Tata Steel, etc. Right? It's fast, far more evolving. Hence, the finance team has to be a lot more agile, right? As the business model changes, right? Because like in my erstwhile consulting era, we suggested a lot more business model changes to the enterprises, to the CEOs, right? And the CFOs have to be a very key enabler to make the finance or to be agile enough to be compliant as the business model changes. For example, if I'm an e-commerce entity, right, it's not a very difficult decision to, let's say, move from an inventory model to a marketplace model, or vice versa, right? I was on a marketplace model to an inventory model, but the compliance in both these business models is very, very different, right? When you suddenly move to a marketplace model, you have a lot of merchants on board, and each of the merchants also have to now be compliant, right? As opposed to a very controlled environment, like, for instance, an inventory model, right? Another piece would be the scale of invoices, right? As you scale and your own merchants or restaurants or cab drivers, whatever, as they scale, some of them come under the ambit of e-invoicing, right? Now they have to be invoicing compliant. You also need to ensure your broader ecosystem is compliant, right? A lot of startups also consider creating ad hoc because they don't plan all of this far ahead. They would start with one provider, take a local chartered accountant and start with them, and then eventually, let's say, graduate to a big four, as opposed to thinking about it far ahead, right? Because they're always, as is the case with India, because the laws are still getting framed. A lot of startups in compliance that, at least personally, I've seen, are a few steps behind the government in adopting technology.
That was actually a theme which was also echoed when we discussed this during the logistics discussion, right? That the government is much more ahead when it comes to tracking companies using technology versus the companies themselves trying to catch up, even if it's like fintech or those which operate at the cusp of technology. So a lot of catching up to do. But it's an interesting point that you raise. The dynamics or the characteristics, unique characteristics between the inventory model and the marketplace model, and how the compliance changes according to that evolution. So let's get in a few voices who have joined us to share their views on this. Dilip, from a home office with just 2 people on board in 2008 to becoming one of India's largest car search ventures, cardekho.com has come a long way. So I want to understand from you, as you grew and the employee base increased, how did your requirements of taxation and compliances also change?
So right now, we started with 2 people, 2 of our founders in Jaipur, and now we are 5,000 plus employees, and offices are spread more than maybe 100 cities across the country and internationally also. So foundation has to be very strong, and your vision has to be very clear where you want to go. I agree with Swaroop, like some of them may take a route like first business and then compliances, but in my view, both should go hand on hand, because once things slips from your hand, it's very difficult to put them on track. and then you put additional machinery, additional manpower to bring them on track. It's better to plan in a proper way, and you go hand on hand as you expand.
As they say,
Cost of
prevention is better than cure.
it's not prevention, it's retirement. And you rightly mentioned, like, government is much ahead of the entrepreneurs and the businesses, be it startup or be it a settled company. And now the data is available in the with the government, and you need to do the compliances. So rightly said, 206 was a nightmare. Even up to 3 days in advance, we're not able to figure out how to do. We're taking confirmation from the vendors and the customers and so on. But yeah, you have to have a proper team and strong team in the finances, actually, if you want to grow. And finance is not only a cost function, which is now very clear. It is a backbone of any industry, and it has to be very, very strong. That's why we are today unicorn, and we are very well established and well process oriented, managed organization, as that what we can claim. So our vision of our founders were very clear on that.
All right. Let's continue this discussion on the evolving dynamics, compliance dynamics between inventory and marketplace models. And Nilesh, let me bring you in, to the list of financial compliances in an Indian setup can be overwhelming. It's for large companies, but also for startups that need to track tax, GST returns, company secretary requirements, and other mandatory filings as per law. So in your, the bird's eye view, what are the major challenges faced and what are the penalties for non-compliance?
It's a very interesting comment, Gautam, and Swaroop and Dilip will speak a lot about it. I think there's a broader context to this, and it's not just tax; it's the whole regulatory framework, isn't it? And therefore, when you think of yourself as a CFO, I think there is service to the business, there is operating controls in the business, there is regulatory compliance, including tax, and there's a need to bring flexibility and agility because things around us are changing faster than things are changing inside us. And I think that's the sort of quadrant that you are stuck into as a CFO. And you need to balance all of these things. How do you make returns to happen so that customer service is high, but you're still compliant with tax? It's a very interesting challenge, isn't it? If I dial back in time to the point that Swaroop was making, pre-GST service tax, as Pepperfry, I was filing one single return at all India level. Post GST, as Pepperfry, nothing is changed in my business. I'm filing 150 returns, just to be compliant with law. So that's the dynamic which is changed, and that is what we're speaking about. I have no disagreement with everything that Dilip has said or Swaroop has said. I just want to make a very different point here. I think the choice remains with us. The choice remains with us to either resist the change or as digital native business to internalize the change. So the question that we could ask ourselves is, if there is an e-way bill already in present, do I need to then create in my system a transfer order for moving goods? Maybe it's time to make your own transfer order redundant and just rely on e-way bill. If there is a monthly reconciliation that I need to do with my vendors so that I can get GST credit, can I remove my no due certification process and can I substitute it with the monthly reconciliation? So I think we can either resist the change or we can duplicate processes over what we're already doing in the organization and put far more resources and create complexity, or accept that, this is a change we'll have to live with and therefore adopt our processes and adopt the way we do business so that we actually start leveraging the infrastructure that willy-nilly we have no choice but to accept and then ride on that. So that's my sort of take. I completely, as I said, agree with everything that Dilip said, and there's nothing more that I can add to it. But I would sort of ask ourselves as an organization, can we do this different? Can we just make some of the other processes redundant so that what is being forced of us becomes actually central to the way we run finance? So that's sort of my reflection on the whole topic of that.
That's an interesting spin on things. Rather than expecting change coming in from the regulatory side, you're wondering what as internal process can you do to remove redundancies. But in terms of the big change which say startups could do, Nilesh, what would be your advice if you're talking about internal processes to manage complexity when we look at the regulatory regime? Is there any tip you could share with the viewing audience, some of whom could be startup founders, on what they would need to look at when it comes to simplifying their organizational structure and remove redundancies from a financial compliance perspective? Any tip or two you could suggest?
Sure. So I think it will all come down to, can you go to a single source? I think most of the time finance team unfortunately spends time reconciling multiple databases, okay, and trying to figure out which is the version of truth which is actual truth. Okay, so can you really go to a single source? And which is where my point was, Gautam. My point was actually about saying if e-way bill is the way to move things across states, okay, should I actually take out transfer orders in my organization, which was a redundant process, and I spent enormous time reconciling e-way bills with transfer orders. So maybe the time is come to make transfer orders redundant and just rely on e-way bill so that you have one single source, you manage the regulatory requirement, and you ensure that your entire processes are then based on e-way bill and you don't have a transfer order. So that's where I come down to. So one single source, there are changes which are forced on you, make that change as a part of your life rather than trying to evolve around those changes. That's the way I think you could handle it differently.
All right, something to think about for startups. Put a pin on that, what Nilesh has mentioned. Meanwhile, another aspect of financial compliance is visibility. So I want to get Harsh in for his perspective on this. Harsh, financial compliances are documentation heavy and every process needs to be filed and documented for future references. Now, this is something that technology platforms can do better than human interfaces. They also allow for, say, quick and anytime retrieval of data using the power of the cloud. From your experience, what does that say? Do you agree with this?
No, absolutely. So good evening all, and very interesting remarks shared by Dilip and Nilesh as well, and obviously they being the subject matter experts on this topic. I would like to sort of come in from a different perspective as a startup founder. Essentially, when we started the business, obviously the business was growing quite quickly, but little did we realize that in a short span of 5 years, the business will explode in a manner that will put a lot of burden on compliance and regulatory framework. And up until now, like the three major trends that I want to just highlight at a high level is that the entire finance function was essentially viewed within our organization, and I'm sure this example relates to several others as well, more from a compliance aspect, whereas the real expectation which any startup founder has from the finance function is more around business enablement. And today, if you talk about businesses, particularly the unicorns or the startup ecosystem exploding in terms of growth, we can't take a step back anymore. It has become table stakes for us to ensure that if you're growing at a fast clip, whether it's through organic channels or inorganic channels, technology enablement is today no longer a topic which is confined only to any of the functions. It's become a top of mind agenda for any startup founder. And particularly, COVID has given a major fillip to this entire notion because finance as a function, at least, we found to be fairly technology resistant because there are certain ways in which they are very comfortable working. But as they say, COVID has accelerated a lot of adoption of technology. What could have taken decades has now happened in a matter of few weeks. And really the aspect around compliance and at a more broader level, which we feel is extremely important, is that finance as a function was always in a reactive mode. But when you are actually collecting millions of lines of data, what can I do from a compliance aspect and a technology enablement aspect to ensure that I'm moving from a reactive to a proactive mode, where I can really leverage the power of artificial intelligence and really get a lot of identification of my risks and red flags before even that were to happen. And today, this topic has largely been confined to the finance team. But the push that we've been trying to make is to ensure that this becomes a C-suite topic because you can't really take shortcuts when it comes to compliance. And especially like, this example at ours, and, obviously this was mentioned earlier as well by Swaroop, that you're not responsible for the compliance only of your organization. Today, we work with several vendors, we work with several contractors, and several of them are MSME and SME. As a principal employer, you're actually even responsible for their compliance. And we've had funny instances where, today we are present in 9 cities. Maybe one location that we are present in being non-compliant has the power of pulling down the entire organization. So that's the risk that you together have today. And again, coming back, to the question around, would I agree that the power of cloud in terms of document storage becomes important? Absolutely. Technology today, more than table stakes and saving us automation hours and FTEs, today has become the single source of truth. Today, sitting anywhere and everywhere, you want to have full access to all your documents. And couldn't agree more with Nilesh when he mentioned that, most of the time when I analyzed our finance team, they were actually spending reconciliation was the new buzzword. And you sometimes wonder, how can I just be spending so many FT hours in reconciliation? How I wish the single source of truth, whether it's us or the partners that we are working with, would speak to each other. So from that aspect, to summarize, cloud is the way to go. Document storage available online anytime is definitely the table stakes now. But more importantly, it's a major mindset shift that all finance professionals need to bring on board, which we obviously as startup founders are really working in partnership with them to make technology, whether it's compliance or the broader functions of finance, really at heart of business partnership. Because in absence of that, it's not about saving FT resources or the manual work. It's really about, if I want to grow at 2x, 3x of what I've done last year, without this automation, there is no way in the world that can be accomplished.
All right, let me get in Swaroop to respond to that. This partnership that Harsh speaks of, between enablers and enterprises. How does that evolve now, considering, there's a shift in the mindset of, say, the role of the CFO itself. And we spoke about this, Swaroop, where we looked at enabling compliance at the point where it is required in an automatic manner, where it's just integrated. But we spoke about that in the context of large enterprises. When we talk of startups, the problem is they might think that, we'll do that when we scale up. What do they need to think when they start itself? Should they be doing it right at the outset so that when they scale up, it's just natively integrated into their system, so they don't have to worry about retrofitting and trying to force fit something into a setup which doesn't work or might not work?
Yeah, makes sense, Gautam. In fact, I feel the point of view on compliance, right, and what are the implications in the context of each business disruption that a startup is on, has to be brought in by the CFO, right? They should not only ensure the BAU compliance of their own business, but there are a lot of second and third order implications of compliance on in the business that a lot of startups do, right? And that point of view has to be brought in by the CFO, and they will only be able to do this if they are, for instance, deeply embedded in understanding the product roadmap, for instance, right? And what is the new business strategy that I'm going to do? What are the new offerings that I have in the incubation phase? Right? All of these, the CFO has to deeply understand and then suggest the financial and the compliance implications of this, right? And a lot of these are, for example, not necessarily, let's say, compliance tech, which are plug and play, right? A lot of these are APIs, for instance, that the product and technology teams can embed within their own platform, right? And a lot of we do a lot of consulting and technology enablement for a lot of those startups, and a lot of those customers are not even CFOs for us, right? It's the chief, is the product head of that startup, it's the technology head of that startup, right? Who consumes our APIs in order to be real-time compliant in their business, right? And this points us to like the broader real-time compliance as a theme that we are seeing, that the world is moving to, that the Indian enterprises are moving to. And if I just recap that for the audience here, right? We see technology's role in compliance evolving in three phases. The first, I think the basic phase, which started off in like 2017, was a software assisted compliance. What this means is, for a lot of filing and reconciliations that happened either on government portals or on Excels, right? You leverage software which is better in user experience and a lot more automated than the tools that the government tools and Excel that people use. The second phase is ERP integrated compliance, right? Which is your compliance platform and your ERP and your business systems, right? Order management system, all of those systems, right, are deeply integrated. The data flows from your ERP and your order management system into your compliance platform automatically, right? All the data transformations, validations, all of those happen automatically, and it just scales beautifully, right? And the third wave, once, let's say, you've also integrated your systems with your compliance platform, comes the real-time compliance, right? What this means is, for example, Nilesh mentioned a lot of reconciliations that finance teams have to do, right? The best method is to actually do away with the reconciliations at all, right? Like, for example, you mentioned, why do you even need when you already have e-wables, you don't need to introduce a lot of those other forms. You don't need those certificates from vendors and all of that, right? And these reconciliations themselves can be 100% automated as well, right? Almost on a weekly or multiple times a week basis, fully automated using APIs. The second could be a lot of merchants or restaurants or vendors that you add onto your platform. At the time of adding a vendor, just like for instance, how a telecom company would do a KYC on you by checking your Aadhaar card or some of the other places, you could embed all of these onto your ERPs and business systems at the source, so that you are able to check if that merchant or vendor is GST compliant. There are 5-6 APIs that you need to check, right, to comprehensively give a compliance risk type of a score to each of your vendors and partners that you do business with, right? A lot of other things, for instance, are at the time of making your payments, because what we see is startups have a large volume of invoices disproportionate to their revenue, right, as compared to some of the larger enterprises. To process a bunch of these payments and check compliance at the time of making payment is non-trivial, right? That does not scale, non-linearly. It only scales linearly if you do not deploy automation, right? If your invoice volume doubles, and you need to check TDS deduction, and if your GST payment status, etc., how much GST payment to deduct at the time of making vendor payment. If your invoices double, your finance team doubles, and that's just not what a lot of startups want to do, right? It is impossible to scale your finance team linearly with the invoices. The only way to do this is real-time compliance, right? In real-time TDS APIs, real-time APIs to check whether at the time of making payment, is this invoice matched, and should I process the payment and all of that, right? The only for startups, hence, they should think of real-time compliance as almost an existential need, right? It's almost there are a lot of hurdles as someone, like for instance, in a lot of sports, right? This is one of the key hurdles that a startup needs to move forward, and then it's just completely automated. Everything else scales, right? A lot of startups love to solve problems using technology, and compliance is one of the in this new world, right? Maybe like 4 years ago, if we had this discussion, I would not have said that. But now in 2021, compliance is also a problem that can be solved through technology, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Let me say, Nilesh, is that the case right now? When we look at Pepperfry's examples, right? When it started to where it is right now, this need for real-time compliance. So anything that Pepperfry did to, which is in consonance with what Swaroop is saying, that you need real-time compliance because you are going to scale up. The question is, you don't know how much you're going to scale up, and sometimes it just surprises you the amount of volumes of invoices you're receiving and everything. So you need to have that base in place. So the need for real-time compliance in startups. Your thoughts, Nilesh?
Yeah, I agree. I think I agree with the evolution that Swaroop spoke about. I mean, we did go from APIs into automation. I think there is potentially one more leg here, which I think more and more becomes important, which is analytics. I think as much as you need to be transactionally right when it comes to compliance, sometimes you also need to take a sit back and sort of ask yourself the question, for the size of the business, is the amount of tax that I'm paying, does that make sense for the size of the business? Is the TCS deduction making sense? And I think, as I said, again, the micro level compliance is important, but when things go wrong at a larger level is because you just added 1 0 or you missed out a 0. And that's when the problem really becomes big. And I think that can't really be solved by putting people at it. That can only be solved by technology. If outside of real-time compliance, there is analytical tools which sort of highlight to you, hey, last month you paid GST of X. This month your GST seems to be half of that or 2 times of that. You need to recheck it again. I think that makes a lot of sense, because then you know where to focus your energy on. So completely agree with everything that Swaroop spoke in terms of the evolution which has happened from APIs to automation, to the point that Harsh made, things going on cloud, and therefore it's possible to actually do things from anywhere in a sense. My only other sort of submission on this one is, as much as analytics plays a role in terms of pricing decision, in terms of everything else in the business, there is a role for analytics when it comes to tax and compliances.
All right. Role for analytics in compliance is also there. It's not just for coming up with business insight. It can help you manage the business as well. Now, earlier during the discussion, I also heard plug and play. Those are music to the ears of startup founders. Anything which is just bought off the shelf and used. Dilip, let me bring you in at this point in time. Startup ventures are typically started by entrepreneurs with, say, an IT background who are receptive to new technologies and using softwares in the processes. So most start with traditional accounting softwares and they slowly grow to full-fledged accounting. So how are these different from, say, complete tax solutions available from the likes of Clear? For instance, could you enlist some benefits?
You're right. As the organization grows, it looks like, how it improves the efficiency in the overall reporting. So we are lucky, and so we are using good ERPs for last couple of years. But again, you rightly said, these are not comprehensive enough to do full reporting and compliances, and then you need our own softwares, and those are available in the market, and and it can be well integrated with your existing ERPs. But problem lies much behind that. So as a startup, when organization is growing, it is not like a very straightforward business was made, and like you put a factory for 500,000 tons per day production, and every day you keep on increasing the production and market. So every day you evolve the new business strategies. They have very, very significant impact on your end results, like how the numbers flowing in revenue. You change the strategy from inventory model to e-commerce model, and e-commerce model to franchising model whatsoever, or otherwise you keep on adding the new line of businesses. So point is like your ERPs, these add-on softwares has to be integrated in such a way that they are receptive of those. They are so flexible that they can receive those changes very quickly and adopt the changes. And that's where the play of role of professionals they have to play. And so like business doesn't grow like this way, and it will keep on growing like this way. So we have to bring the bricks like here, and then another bring the bricks, and then the overall revenue goes up. And there you need the flexibility and agility in the changes in your ERP or in the softwares, whatever is available in the market. Like just we took an example, compliance of Section 206 AV, 206 when it started, giving pain in the month of June, July, that you are just about to die. So you have to be ready enough, like that how many of your customers are not Aadhaar linked, and then you need to go beyond that. It's not possible, you can't think so much. You can't force your customers. As a startup, we always feel, or any other industry as a supplier, is to feel that your customer is king, and then you have to make the customer friendly processes. But governance has to increase, and processes to be made in such a way that as you expand, you can easily, bring them, in your life, and remain compliant and very agile to those things. So that's all. Like e-invoicing, it came and we implemented. Like we have 4 different businesses: new car, used car, insurance, financial services. We operate in different geographies as well, and we maintain all the compliances right from the central team. So just imagine like 4 different portals giving you lots of data which are to use for inventory, unbilled revenue, trade receivables, payables, and then you have to integrate all of them in a ERP and come out in the 7th or 5th of every month. You have to report to the investors, then in compliance context. The overall point what I'm trying to make here is like whatever you develop or whatever you integrate, it cannot be so hard bound that you just can't do the changes. Regulations are changing very quickly. Business is growing very rapidly, and you have to be responsive to that. And as Harsh said, like still the founders or any stakeholders' views will be like business should be finance function should be enabler to the business, not should be a roadblocker. And so the process has to be built in like that. You do the compliances as well as you help the businesses together.
All right, Swaroop, in the context of what Dilip said, how does Clear position itself then? Because for those who might be worried, am I looking at pre-built solution or am I looking at a journey? Because at the end of the day, as Dilip said, startups themselves don't know where they are going to evolve into, right? You start off with one platform, you end up with 4 different verticals, and soon you're wondering, how exactly am I going to manage this? So how does Clear position itself here?
Sure. So, and we're broad based, right? I think we have we help 4 different types of segments, right? There's obviously the B2C part for consumers. We have enterprises, which is our largest segment, and then we also have SMEs and CAs, right? So right from the smallest company to the largest company in India are part of our customer base, and we offer both technology solutions as well as services, right? Whether it is a managed service or a deep technology that they want to integrate into their ERP and leverage it. And I'd like to maybe point out into talk about a couple of things that, for example, the first piece which Nilesh talked about, right, is analytics. And this is something we heard from so many people and so many of our customers, including Pepperfry, right? Is there's a lot of analytics that the finance team does, right? Because and they do it in ad hoc reports on ERP. They use Excels, and as Dilip mentioned, there are so many different portals giving you so much data that you need to absorb all of that data and then find the right insights, right? Our reporting and dashboarding piece is exactly that, right? Is it actually the problem statement that we are trying to solve is how do you optimize your taxes, right? Just like, for example, how procurement optimization is a lever, right? Let's say your headcount optimization is a lever. Very few companies and CFOs are actually evolved enough to think of the net effective tax rate, right, as an optimization lever, right? And this forum actually positively surprised me because they're already thinking about effective tax rate as an optimization lever. And to do that, there are a lot of analytics that you need to do, and our solution actually does a lot of this automatically, right? It's almost plug and play, where we already have access to the company's data because we are integrated with their ERP, help them do filing, reconciliation, yada, yada, right? A lot of those millions of data points, we then put a lot of AI and analytics on top. And instead of like giving hundreds of reports and confusing the heck out of the CFOs that we have, we proactively tell them right when they need to know, and if there is a divergence from the norm, right? For instance, if you are supposed to have paid X amount of GST, whereas you have paid the effective tax rate is something else, please look into this. Or, for example, there's one GSTN where there's a lot of accumulated tax credits. You may want to consider changing your let's say pricing, inter GST pricing to transfer some of that tax credits to other places, right? Maybe this HSN code probably has the wrong tax rate, right? It is supposed to be this tax rate, but I think you have implemented the incorrect tax rates, right? So there are a lot of such smart flags, if you will, that can be built into the system, and very few people are actually thinking about this, right? A lot of people that are supposed to be thinking about this make money through services post facto. What we are actually trying to do is automating this and telling the right people at the right time only the right things that they need to hear and act upon.
Absolutely. Keep it focused, keep it simple so that growth can be achieved. But in any startup's growth stage, there's always the need for funding. And let me bring in Harsh for his point of view on this. Harsh, as startups grow to funding stages, they need to have their compliances in place in order to raise funding and complete processes of due diligence here. So, and technology in this hype growth mode can help not just with ensuring everything is in order, but also with, as we mentioned earlier, record keeping and documentation. So your experience, your thoughts on this, especially from that funding perspective, right? Because that's the moment where everything needs to be in order as investors are pouring through your books.
No, absolutely. Look, and again, the requirement of compliance, over the evolution of a startup changes. I recollect fondly when we were at Series A stage. Obviously, at that point of time, the thought process was more around, let me just get done with the compliance list, and I just want to secure my funding. And very quickly you realize that there's a reason why you need to be compliant, because if you have broader ambitions of eventually IPOing and demonstrating that you have the highest governance framework to give comfort to institutional investors, it no longer is a question of how you do it. It's just about how much efficient can you be. And plug and play is essentially the buzzword for us because that's what we do for our living, particularly with office experience, right? That's what we provide, office spaces, plug and play. And that's when we realize that, it's very, very important for us to be analyzing our compliance framework from an end-to-end perspective, because it's, again, using the similar analogy, right? Like you can be 99% compliant and you can be 1% non-compliant. And if that non-compliance is something that gets caught by the labor inspector who comes visits your office, then the terrorist needs to be lucky only once. And therefore, there's no question that if you're essentially manually doing this and not storing it and having multiple sources of truth, directly or indirectly, at some point of time, you are bound to make mistakes. So technology, particularly from the perspective of A, automating compliances, B, predicting and flagging risk, and C, being the single source of truth where all of this gets together, is essentially not only something which is required today from a due diligence perspective, but more from running a business which is growing at scale very, very quickly. And especially if you're growing 2x, 3x annually, and on top of that, if you're acquiring companies which have totally different systems, becomes even more challenging and difficult. So from that perspective, couldn't agree more. And we no longer see technology as a tool for efficiency and reducing our headcount. It's also to make sure that you're reducing errors, which are bound to happen if there is a lot of manual intervention. And obviously, Nilesh pointed out earlier as well that you can't necessarily grow your finance team linearly. Just because, we started with 10 clients and now we are at 500, does that mean that I need to deploy 50x more strength? No. Can I actually reduce and use more technology? Because I think if you blend the two together, the outcome that you end up getting is a very, very intelligent system.
Absolutely. Kind of reminds me of, whether you study last minute just a day before the exam to make sure everything is in order, or do you make it a process where, in fact, just before the exam, everything is in order and you relax and take a break. Swaroop, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, maybe I'll just add one final point to what Harsh mentioned, right? Is a lot of startups are ultra focused on, for example, optimizing for valuation, right? The right valuation multiple. And something that we've seen and heard everywhere, right, is when investing in developing countries, right, a lot of institutional investors place a disproportionate premium on the best-in-class compliance, right? Because unlike in developed markets, in a developing economy, a lot of things are variable, right? The market is unpredictable. The law to some extent is unpredictable. Everything is unpredictable. What they see is compliance is largely in control of, the finance team over there, right? So because it's largely in control, a company having put in place the right systems and being proactive in compliance, they place a disproportionate value in evaluating companies and figuring out the right valuation.
All right. Now, as we head to the last leg of the discussion, let's get in some summary thoughts on the way forward from everyone on the panel. India is becoming the third largest startup ecosystem in the world, and it's adding more unicorns and soonicorns to its kitty as we speak. And startups are also tapping into the IPO frenzy. So in this landscape, gentlemen, investor due diligence becomes all the more important. And of course, compliances, as we've discussed, plays a critical role in that. So I want to know from each of you, where do you see the future from here? Dilip, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm okay. So you're right. Like, most of the startups are in the investment phase, and a few more years, by the time they establish the processes and the market reach to a maturity, it will continue to do so. And as a finance professionals or as a maybe compliance kind of thing, we need to keep ourselves ready, ready at any point of time, and keep looking for the opportunity that at what right time, right investors, right pricing we get. And at that time, you can't go back and, okay, let me correct my compliance, and then investor ask, and then you delay the whole process by 6 months or 4 months. So it's not a one-time exercise. It is a parallel exercise, or I would say it should be an inbuilt thing. As you book your every invoice, you should know that you are compliant with every transaction. And I think your monthly closing of the books, monthly reporting to the investor should be as good as quarterly, and quarterly should be as good as yearly things, so that you are very sure like what you are reporting is correct and it is coming from the single source of truth, as Nilesh said. So your all portals, processes should be integrated with your financial systems. If not, that should be regularly reviewed, that how soon we can do. And that's how you are ready for any time, due diligence, or maybe any questions when investors comes. Even for listed companies, we have seen recently, few unicorns got listed, and they become, very large companies, and they need to attend the investors call. So far, they were very in a confined, PE investors board, and the board meetings were happening maybe formally or informally. Now they are reporting to thousands of investors, even lakhs of investors. So you have to be very, very ready and clear, like, that you are, what your number, what you are publishing is very, very correct, and it's coming from the source of truth. So is compliance ready, and every transaction has to be, sacrosanct with what you are actually doing. And this you can do only with the help of technology. So nevertheless, your finance team may be of 50 people, 60 people, even compliance team may be of great, but they would become helpless if you don't get the technologies. That's all what I can. Yeah.
Taking that point forward, Nilesh, as the roads of technology and compliance intersect, what's the way ahead as India becomes the third largest startup ecosystem in the world?
Yeah, I think I would think that I would like to see it being predictive. Maybe the way I think about this, Gautam, is what I would really love to see is the whole sort of tax compliance tools ecosystem allows me to be very excited during the day because I'm going to save money and contribute to the business, and enables me to sleep peacefully at night, knowing that everything is in order and I don't have to worry about it. So that's the way I would think about it.
I think that's the benchmark we should all measure ourselves against. Are we having a peaceful night of sleep? Especially for CFOs, I think that would be key. Harsh, your parting thoughts for this discussion, as I mentioned, the startup ecosystem in India evolves to be world beating. What's your parting thought on this, on the road of compliance and technology intersecting?
So I think just taking a step back and going back to the initial comment where the government is actually ahead of all of us when it comes to compliance. I would like to reframe this problem as the issue with non-compliance or us not investing ahead of time is because compliance, at least for a lot of startups which are on path to become unicorns or doing IPO, was more like, hey, look, whenever the next round of funding is going to happen, let's make sure our compliance. But really the goalpost should change towards, rather than passing with flying colors with investor due diligence, can I pass through on a monthly basis with flying colors when it comes to government due diligence? Because at the end of the day, when government is ahead of us, and government today, again, in the last 3 years, and again, a very small example, you have to really work hard and very manually go to IT office multiple times. But, I was surprised that last month, the entire TDS refund that accumulated came on a faceless basis without any manual intervention whatsoever. So when government is taking proactive steps to stay ahead of you, the goalpost for us as founders and for the finance team is largely to make sure that let's take advantage of government being ahead of us and making sure that we are compliant. Because if automatically you're compliant with that, then frankly, there isn't anything to worry about investor due diligence. Then that you're going to pass through. And finance then really plays the role of the strategic enabler rather than just sort of managing compliances on the compliance side of the business.
That's an interesting point of view. Swaroop, your thoughts as we look to wrap up this discussion. Harsh mentioned a very good point that if you just pass through the government compliance test, the investor compliance test would be manageable for you, which is a fair point. So your parting thoughts on this topic?
Absolutely. Yeah. See, as a lot of startups disrupt using technology, right? They disrupt the established legacy business models using technology. What I would see in the future is they will also disrupt internal processes and the bar of technology adoption in internal processes in their own, in how they manage finance and compliance using technology, right? They could actually become, and that's what we are seeing personally as well, right? The most the most feature requests and the most futuristic feature requests that we get are from startups, as opposed to some of the legacy enterprises, right? They can be leaders in deploying technology in compliance and actually disrupt their internal processes, which a lot of enterprises and legacy enterprises can learn from.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of today's discussion on how technology can help startups in managing finances optimally. I'd like to thank all of our panelists for joining us and sharing their thoughts, insights, and experiences on this topic. And before we sign off, I'd also like to thank Clear for partnering with us for today's session. We'll be back with yet another session very soon. Till next time, this is Gautam Srinivasan signing off. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Divan.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. Great speaking with you, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Yeah, thank you.